We're going to jump into our content here for today, team. Let's slide back. You saw my contact information. Dewey Norwood, very fortunate now to be entering this month, my 24th year in the financial services industry. Certainly a blessing to be able to do that, and really excited about the work that's happening across our higher education partnerships and also the work that we're doing across our HBCU partners. And so special thanks. You can scan the QR code here on the screen to get connected with me via LinkedIn. And I would encourage everyone that's on today to connect in with all of our panelists and all of our presenters. They're much cooler than me too. So you definitely want to make sure you get connected. And what you laughing at? Our panelists are laughing at me, y'all. That's not funny. But bottom line is you want to stay connected and continue the dialogue from there. As we continue on, Angel, thank you. Let's talk a little bit about our firm. Just a reminder to everyone that's on today, Wells Fargo has about $1.9 trillion in assets. 1 in 3 households here across the United States is going to have a banking relationship with our institution. Maybe it's a 529 plan. Maybe it's a home mortgage. Maybe it's a small business loan that you have or a checking account. So we're really honored to be able to be serving now 69 million customers from a global perspective. And again, 1 in 3 households actually having a banking relationship with our institution. So I hope that gives you a sense of the depth and the breadth of this amazing institution. Hey, it's Women's History Month, so special shout out to all of those in celebration of Women's History Month. We've got a recent press release that's here on the screen spotlighting our firm's commitment to expanding resources for women-owned small businesses. And so please be sure to scan this. You can learn more about this amazing support that's happening. And my hope is that we have lots of folks on the line today that may be small business owners in some way, shape, or form, or aspiring small business owners. Hey, as we continue on, do want to touch briefly on our firm's higher education commitments. You know, if you had the highlighter out, I would highlight over the last 10 years that the firm has provided over $97 million of financial support for students along their higher education journey. So it's programming, it's scholarships, but it's also greater events like the things that we're hosting here for today for the Beyond College webinar series. You'll also see some details relative to financial support that the firm provided along the lines of emergency grants amidst the pandemic. And so very, very important to get a sense of those items from there. All right, as we continue on with things, I'm going to hand the reins over to my great buddy in Betsy Burton Strump. Betsy is a great partner of ours, an amazing leader at TMCF. Betsy, so happy to be on with you for our second time today. I got you twice.
That's right.
My cup runneth over. Please, give you a moment to talk a little about TMCF.
It's a fantastic day when you get to spend so much time with Mr. Dewey Norwood. And y'all, please link up with him on LinkedIn so that we don't have to hear him crying later if he doesn't win the how many LinkedIns do I have? Anyhow, we're super happy to be here hosting this amazing webinar today. Thurgood Marshall College Fund has been around for 35 years, working with historically Black colleges and universities and predominantly Black institutions. We focus on scholarships, on providing the 300,000 students that go to HBCUs with scholarships, with programs that support not only getting to and through school, but also receiving opportunities for internships, immersive experiences, and full-time jobs. We want to make sure that as we help students in the classroom, we're also helping them to be successful when they graduate. One of the key components and the key success factors that everybody on this call knows is the best way to manage your student loans is to graduate. So we make sure our scholars graduate and graduate as close to on time as possible. This academic year coming up, we're going to be managing over 100 different scholarship programs for our partners, including several scholarship programs that are managed by Wells Fargo. They've been an amazing and outstanding partner, and we're so fortunate to be able to work with them doing what we love to do, which is helping students grow and succeed. TMCF, as we said, has been around for 35 years, and our goal is to ensure student success by promoting educational excellence. So not just in the classroom, but the things that you learn out, around, and after school, and preparing you for the next phases of your life. So thanks for giving us the opportunity, Dewey. And I won't poke any more fun on you today, but I appreciate this. And at TMCF, we're really happy to partner with you and to host the Beyond College series.
No, Betsy, thank you for your engagement. And team, I would encourage everyone to get connected in with Betsy and with the entire TMCF team to kind of continue the discussions from here. And we're honored to be able to engage and support the work that TMCF is leading. So, all right, team, we're going to continue and jump through our housekeeping items because you've heard enough of Norwood. We really need to get to the real stars of the show with everything here for today. So just some quick reminders relative. We touched on the About Wells Fargo piece. Remember, team, this is a safe space. We want you all to ask real questions so you can apply these pieces of information to your upcoming interviews. Many of you all may be interviewing now. Many of you all may be interviewing over the next couple of weeks or maybe starting to consider some full-time offers. So this is a safe space to ask questions of the team. I will tell you, we have received at least 25, maybe closer to 50 questions from students so far. We can continue to take questions through the Q&A feature and also through the chat feature today. We know that that may or may not be enabled for everyone, but we'll continue to take items from those areas. And please remember, if you submit a question to us, it comes into us confidentially. We are never going to read your name out. We're never going to share your confidential information. But I promise you, if a question is top of mind for you, it's probably top of mind for others that are participating as well. Hey, I want to bring up one of our other co-partners in all of this great work because Angel Heyman, you all have seen her in action over our last couple of webinars. She is the straw that stirs the drink here relative to all of this work, relative to things. And so, Angel, I know you've got some exciting metrics to share. We got to do our roll call to see who the top colleges are, some of the high schools even that are involved. And so, please, we want to give you the floor at this time. So fill us in.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We are excited to share that we have nearly 350 people who have registered for today's webinar, and coming in top place is University of Nebraska, Omaha. So give a shout out for them. And next up, next up we have Kennesaw State University. And then tying, we have like a four-way tie, actually 5 ways. Texas A&M University, University of Phoenix, Stanford University, Iowa State University, and Grand Canyon University. So shouts out to all of you for showing up strong. We appreciate you.
All right, Angel, thanks for that check-in and report. As you guys can tell, she keeps all the metrics and keeps us on our toes. You know, she really is an amazing partner. So Angel, thanks for that report out. And thanks for just all of the great work that you're doing. Some final reminders, team. You know, we're going to talk about the behavioral interview piece today. We're going to give you some questions that you need to be anticipating and thinking about for your next upcoming interview. There's a virtual space now, right? Maybe you're not meeting folks face to face. How is it different if you're, presenting virtually rather than meeting someone face to face? We're also going to give you some tips for engaging, and then what happens after the show. Hey, you've been amazing in the interview, but what do you need to do after those things are completed? So we're going to go over all of those items with our amazing presenters and partners. At the end, we're going to give you an opportunity to give us some feedback. You'll have another QR code that you can scan and give us some real-time feedback on things. Again, about 7 to 10 days from now, Jeremy and the team at TMCF will have everything posted on the YouTube channel so you can access. Please share that information with others via the hashtags here. Go ahead and @mention TMCF on all of your social media handles. Go ahead and mention Wells Fargo and use that WFC Beyond College hashtag and, of course, the TMCF hashtag as well. All right, we're 10 minutes in. We've covered off on all of those pieces. Let's get to the real stars of the show on the next slide. And let's introduce the amazing Ruth Armandades joining us by way of Phoenix, Arizona today, and my good friend, Somkit Kam, who is joining us from the DFW, and she is a Cowboys fan. So step back, all of the other folks that are NFL fans that are not Cowboys fans.
That's right.
Ruth and Kit team bring 50 plus years of experience in the corporate space. They started when they were 7. Let's get that clear. but they have 50 years plus of experience, and they are exceptional leaders. And the information that they share with you all today is going to be of benefit to you. So Ruth, Kit, honored to be able to work with you all today. Want to hand the reins over to you for some quick introductions, and then in turn, let's jump into our content and to our Q&A that will be happening later on. Ladies and gentlemen, Ruth and Kit, take it away.
Thanks so much, Dewey. So as Dewey mentioned, make sure that you are leveraging the Q&A if you have that option. I'm so excited to join the conversation today. I know you guys will be blasting us with tons of questions. Dialing in from Phoenix, as Dewey mentioned, and I've been with Wells Fargo for 10 years, but in financial services, 25. So please leverage the expertise and the experience that we've had to ask as many questions as you can today. Kit, I'll have you introduce yourself as we kick it off.
Well, you'll be brief because Dewey's already done the honors, right? So in introducing up briefly, I am from Big D, Dallas, Texas here. Definitely a huge Cowboys fan. So if you want to talk smack, I'm ready. Maybe not this year, right? Maybe in future years. I've actually been with Wells Fargo now going on 8 years, and Dewey kind of exaggerated. I actually started at Wells and professionally recruiting at 10, not 9 or 7, Dewey. So I'm glad to be here. So excited to have the discussion with you all.
Excellent. Thanks, Kit. And as you'll see here, please reach out to us on LinkedIn. So if we don't get to your question today, you want to connect afterwards, we're happy to connect. All right. So let's start off with a poll question. If you want to bring up the next slide, some of us have not interviewed in a while. Some of us have. So think about, when was the last time you had a job interview? For some of you might be recent, some of you might not have had an interview. And then let's give it a few seconds and close the poll. All right, let's share those results and see where we are at. Well, yeah, in the last 30 days, 24%, okay. 5+ years. Well, let me tell you, that's the reality. A lot of times we don't think of interviewing as a skill set or muscle that we have to continue practicing and keeping fresh. So today I hope that we can talk a little bit about, what are some of the techniques and some of the things you can do to prepare. I've heard it many times, individuals say, well, how do I prepare for an interview? I don't know what they're going to ask me. Well, we're going to share with you guys some secrets on behavioral interviewing and how to prepare for that interview. I know it creates anxiety in all of us, so we hope that we can at least get you to some comfort level. And believe me, the more you prepare and the more you really know your skill sets, the more comfortable you will get. Recently, somebody asked me, how do I get comfortable in an interview? And I said, well, keep in mind, you are the expert in you. So many times we underestimate the fact that many things that we do, we don't take stock of, right? Like, we're not making notes of like, okay, this is an opportunity for me to think about my teamwork, or I took the initiative or leadership. So we'll talk a little bit about those tricks and tips that you can implement as you kind of go through your whether it's your school career or professional career, so that you can really enhance your interview skills. All right, so let's talk about behavioral interviews. Why behavioral interviews, and what are they? So the majority of companies, we do behavioral interviews because they are a good indicator that your past performance is going to be a predictor of that future performance, right? So if you have taken initiative, if you have worked well in teams, the likelihood is that you're going to continue that particular skill set and enhance it, right? So we know the goal is to always improve. So you might say, well, what if I have never done it? How can you, gauge my skill set if I've never done it? Believe me, you will be able to pull some of your experience, both from projects, volunteer work, that you can use within the interview. So behavioral interview, the best way to remember it is by using the STAR method. So the STAR method basically starts with the S standing for either a situation, the T for a task, an A for the action, and finally the result. Now, one thing that I want you to think about is I don't want you to oversimplify. Yes, it is a very simple acronym, STAR method, but I've had situations where I've interviewed an individual and they say, well, I hit all 4 marks, right? I told you what the situation was. I told you what the task at hand was. I told you what my actions were and the results. Check, check, check. Well, everyone checks that box, right? So it's a very transactional answer. So I'll give you an example. Somebody might say, well, a time that I dealt with a difficult customer was the customer came in, didn't have the receipt. I told them that unfortunately I couldn't give them a refund. And they weren't very happy, but they went ahead and took the store credit, and I was able to handle the situation. Absolutely. You told me what you did. You told me the situation and the end result. But a much better answer might be where you look at the situation and you empathize with the customer, right? We've all been in the situation where we are that customer who lost their receipt. And as an employee of that organization, you want to make sure that customer returns back. So a better response might be where, I remembered the customer and I apologize that I wasn't able to give them a full refund, but I explained our policy, offered them some options. I checked in with my manager. Unfortunately, they couldn't override it, but the customer was at least happy that I was willing to check, and we gave them store credit, and they've been a repeat customer ever since, right? So not only have you told me what that situation, the task was, the actions, and the end result, but you've also been able to convey some critical thinking skills, right? So that makes you stand out from your other peers who are basically checking off the box and saying, well, I followed the STAR method and I, told you what the situation was, what the task, the action, and the results. So if anything, if I can certainly emphasize is don't oversimplify the acronym. And we'll talk a little bit about how to kind of, create some tips as you go along. So let's keep going. All right. So preparing for the interview, right? So we constantly kind of worry about what am I going to be asked? What if I don't meet the skill set? What if I only have, 6 months? What you can do is you can take the job description and take a look at, okay, in the job description, it does call out for, detail, attention to detail, strong communication skills, working well within teams, analytical skills, and then maybe you see some technical skills and you're like, okay, they've called out that I need to have strong Excel skills. Maybe it's a technical role, SQL, SAS, R, Python, whatever the case may be. So you take that job description and you actually start thinking about, okay, when did I use Excel? When did I use Python? When did I have to analyze work? And you start creating a cheat sheet for yourself. Early on in my career, I used to create an Excel spreadsheet, and at the bottom would create tabs, and I would have examples. A time when I dealt with a difficult customer, a time when I worked with a team, a time that maybe perhaps I had to work independently and think outside the box. Because what's going to happen at the time of the interview, it's out of our comfort zone, we feel the pressure, and we forget all those times that we have actually done, taken the lead and taken the initiative. We've demonstrated leadership. We've provided consultation to a customer. We have maybe saved, some spend, and maybe we looked at some data and analyzed it, and we were able to show, oh, we can create some efficiencies here, right? So all those things, sometimes in an interview, we don't think about. So if you really understand what the job description is, what the role is going in, you're able to better prepare and anticipate some questions. You want to create a few different scenarios, right? So for example, if you have limited work experience, you might think, well, I've only had one job, so every response that I give is going to center around this one job. Absolutely. But you can augment that experience by, are you part of a club and maybe you hold an officer position? Maybe you had to do some fundraising. Maybe you had some coursework during a class, and the project was an entire semester and there was different segments to that project. So you can pull from both your educational, your volunteer work, and your actual paid career job to pull into those answers. Have different scenarios so that unfortunately you don't get to the interview and you say, oh, I always do that. Or, well, again, during that project, and you use that exact same project in different versions of the responses that you're given, right? So you don't want to do that. You want to make sure that you think ahead of what are all the possible different scenarios where you've used certain skills. All right, so let's keep going. Anticipating the questions. If you think about the core competencies, I've mentioned looking at the job description. So many times you're able to look at a job description and think about, okay, this is a public facing opportunity. I'm going to interact quite a bit with the public. So I'm likely going to be asked about my customer service. I'm likely going to be required to convey strong communication skills. Maybe you looked at the job description and it talks about working well within teams. So think about, okay, what does teamwork look like? What does initiative look like? Not all job descriptions will have every single competency that they desire, right? But you'll be able to pull out a few knowing that there's patterns here, right? You looked at this job description, okay, a lot of customer service, so I know they're going to be looking at how well I do in front of a customer. Oh, I'm going to have to be on the phones quite a bit. How do I sound? Do I sound confident? So think of those core competencies as you kind of integrate in your prep work. The next slide will give you an idea of a little bit more drill down approach to your experience. So for example, if you have very limited work experience, then what I want you to think about is let's pull in your project work. I once interviewed an individual who had limited work experience, had good responses, but not really deep responses. And I could tell they were really trying to pull. And then at the very end, I said, is there anything we didn't cover that you'd like me to include? And then they said, oh, by the way, I also do, I'm a landscaper. My aunt is a realtor and she has created kind of a need for my business because I go in and I clean up every property that she's getting ready to sell to make it more, marketable to the clients. I go in and do the yard work. I've done some touch up, and that has created some referrals. And I now have a whole crew that I've actually started. I've got some friends of mine that have become my employees. All of a sudden, this individual was pulling all this information. It wasn't on the resume. So what I want you to think about is many times you will put things on your resume thinking, this is what the experience that I have that matches the role. You want to look at those transferable skills that you can pull into that interview. So I want you to also think about, okay, if I had to think of a project, what is that project? What did I do? If I have to think about, maybe showing initiative, what does that look like? And think about kind of almost making your spreadsheet to show, okay, this is my competency for teamwork. This is my competency for initiative. And it's almost like breaking down the interview before the interview. You would be surprised that if you prepare yourself going in, you will remember every scenario, because right before the interview, now, fortunately, you can't pull it out the interview and go, wait, I wrote that down, right? Right before the interview, you can certainly review it the night before, just like you would going into study for a test, right? You look at your prep sheet and you go, okay, I remember this. Yep, let me refresh my memory. Yep, I was able to save, $10,000 in that project, or we fundraised X amount. Yep, I was able to, rally the team when we were behind on a timeline. You're going to be able to anticipate every question because you've already thought about, here's where I've used that competency and I can demonstrate it and stand apart from others. All right, let's keep going. I won't read these examples because these are just kind of some behavioral interviews, some interview questions, right? And feel free to take a screenshot, Now, some of these are not going to be verbatim. You know, sometimes the recruiter might tweak the verbiage. Maybe they customize it to the specific role. So don't be married to the language, but many times it's a situation of tell me about a time, because we are asking you to tell us about your history, right? Not how would you approach this, but how would you tell me about how you did this? Okay, so think of that when you are preparing for your behavioral interview. They're going to be looking at past. It is okay to sometimes, you know, you're in an interview and it is okay to say, you know, I didn't have experience doing that specifically, but I did have a situation with this XYZ, and you're able to kind of pull some experience that matches to it. Now, unfortunately, what you don't want to do is, so for example, you get to a point in the interview and the person says, well, tell me about the time that you took the leadership and, you know, took the initiative when no one else was meeting the deadline. And in your head, you're thinking, wow, gosh, I work with a really great team. And yeah, that's never happened. And then you're like, oh, that's never happened. You know, we just have a really great team. So I understand that maybe perhaps you've never had to do that, but another different way to answer that is by saying, you know, I thankfully haven't had experience being behind deadlines, because here is what I do, right? So then you talk about, I pre-plan, we check in, you know, on a weekly basis. We have a task sheet chart that, you know, we check in and make sure that we're on task. So then that person goes, okay, they're not behind because they're very proactive in what they're doing. All right, so let's keep going. I mentioned earlier that you are the expert in yourself. And one of the questions that you will always be asked in an interview is they're going to say, tell me about yourself. Now, what you want to do is you want to make sure that what you are conveying in the tell me about yourself, otherwise known as the elevator pitch, that you're bringing in skill sets and knowledge that correlate to the job, right? So if you're applying for an analyst position, you're not going to say, well, I really enjoy baking, I enjoy volunteering in my community, and I have a passion for running. Those are great hobbies. Those are great things that, you know, kind of tell a little bit more about your story. But what you want to do is talk about the skill sets and knowledge that correlate to the role. So we're going to do a role play. I've asked David from our Thurgood Marshall team to prepare his elevator speech. So let's just say I was getting ready to interview David, and he's interviewing for a full-time analyst job. And I say, hey, David, really excited to meet you today. Before we get started in the interview, tell me a little bit about yourself. So David, give me your elevator speech.
Yeah, nice to meet you, Ruth. My name is David Anderson. Just a little bit about myself. I have a degree in finance and a master's degree in accounting, but that's not really what the end of the story is. I have years of experience as a revenue accounting manager within the software space, and that's translatable because Wells Fargo isn't just a bank, it's a technology company, because you have pushed the envelopes going forward and break the mold of what other banks are now trying to do for you. Now, with my experience with both software and my financial leadership, I do believe that I'll be an asset for your team.
Excellent. David, first of all, kudos on a great elevator speech. And I'm going to have you guys share the next screen, because the other reason why David was able to tailor it, like we gave him a script and say, you know, this is kind of a scenario of what an elevator speech looks like. But David knows himself, knows what, you know, he wants to convey in an interview when he's representing himself. So really think about, you can certainly use this as your model and think, okay, this is where I'm active on campus. Here are the skill sets that I bring to the table. Show some excitement, show some passion, and really tailor it. If you practice it in front of a mirror, it's going to feel very, very silly, but I promise you're going to either be able to see your facial reactions, and you're also going to be able to hear the confidence in your voice, because you're going to build up that kind of internal muscle to be able to have a great elevator speech. So let's move on to the next topic. I'm going to kick it off to Kit.
Great, thanks, Ruth and David. Always really a treat to be able to learn and also get to see and hear really real live role playing in action, right? So nicely done. And I love the enunciation and just the engagement in how he provided that elevator speech. So that was great, David. So I'm glad that we were able to have you join us to do that. So lots of valuable information that Ruth just went over as well. It really, now that you have a strategy to build, that you build a strategy around preparing for a successful interview, right? So now let's talk about, executing on that plan. Here's what I mean, starting with the virtual interview. We can start on there. So if you're interviewing by phone, for example, in this virtual environment that we're in, although we are trying to be in more person now, but you need to be prepared really to take on any type of situation, right? But let's start with the virtual by phone first, okay? I suggest that, to hear yourself and how you come across, maybe record yourself or even leave yourself a voicemail to kind of hear how you come across or sound. Let's face it, I have to do that as well. I'm not a huge fan of how I come across, but I do work on it. I know that in past history, I do come across very monotone just because I try to make sure that I manage how I come across. But I do really focus on sitting up straight and really smiling when I do speak, because that does really help to come across not as so monotone, but bringing my energy to the game, so to speak, right? Let's face it, unless you're Dewey Norwood, you're not a natural enthusiast with lots of energy, right? So I do have to be very, very intentional in how I come across and how I'm perceived. Okay. So additionally, secure a quiet place when you are doing interviews with good reception to minimize distractions. I don't know about you, but I do get distracted a lot. So I do mute all the lines when I'm doing having conversations or presenting information, for example. Use a landline. I know you're probably wondering, what the heck is a landline? Well, it does exist. And for some of us old folks, right, we do still have that as well. But when you can, try to use a landline if possible, okay? And also really be aware of your environment. Again, avoiding background noise. Mute your line when you are speaking. When you're not speaking, just remember to, we've done this many times, right, Ruth, is just make sure that you unmute when you need to speak, okay? Also, something that's not on the slide here, but worth calling out, is that more and more companies are moving to video interviewing. Just be prepared for that scenario. But you still need to dress for the occasion because you are gonna be videotaping that interview, okay? Just like you would for an in-person interview. And also be sure to have your resume handy. I know it has helped me many times before as a reference point. You think that you remember everything, but sometimes it is, have that available and handy so that you can stay very focused and intentional in what you're sharing during the interview process. And also, just like interviewers, we're going to be taking notes. We're not going to remember everything. We're not saying anything and capturing negative information that you're providing to us. We really are just gathering information so that we can assess later on. And that's what I encourage you to do as well. Take notes. Remember, this is a two-way street. You have a choice and an opportunity to assess us as well. So take notes along the way and be prepared to have conversations about questions that are important to you as well, okay? So let's move on to the next slide and talking about during the interview itself. So let's talk a little bit in regards to specifically the body language. So in my opinion, it's really one of the most critical because it can be seen and felt during an interview process. Just like the role play that you saw earlier that David did with Ruth, right? You can tell that he seems and comes across as fully engaged and really was really passionate about his understanding of himself and what he wants to do, right? So that's why it's critical that you are aware of those items that you're addressing and providing during that interview process. Think about a few exchanges that you've had recently, for example, one that made you kind of feel weird or off. Then now think about one that made you feel comfortable or accepted. what was it about that exchange that made you feel that way? Was it because that person smiled or didn't smile, for example? Or was there any form of acknowledgement during that conversation? So that actually will be an additional layer of really for us to assess, your connectivity and potential fit, and vice versa as well. That's an opportunity for you to engage and assess who you're engaging with as well, to think about us as holistically as a culture and environment. That is this a place that you want to be in, right? Also, your attitude, emotions, and personality are in full display through your body language as well. So do smile and be sincere and greet your interviewer with a firm handshake. I've had circumstances in the past where, because maybe the way I was raised, for example, a firm hand grip wasn't really something that was the norm, so to speak. However, I have had to adjust where I do provide a firm handshake, not necessarily a limp fish, so to speak, right? Where it does seem to help along the way to actually gain confidence. Believe it or not, it's all those gestures that help to incorporate confidence in how you interact and come across as well. So be aware, self-aware of your body language and hand gestures to limit distractions. I've also had a really great friend of mine professionally that during presentations or during conversations, I tend to speak, so to speak, with my hands a lot. So it can come across as very distracting, right? So to help me to limit the distractions to others, I do still speak with my hand. However, I do it, especially during a virtual environment, do it under where it's off camera. So I can still do what I need to do to help me stay focused, but also make it less distracting for others as well, okay? So just a tip there. Now let's talk about eye contact. Again, this originally many years ago wasn't always something that I was comfortable with, honestly, with eye contact. However, to be able to function successfully and professionally, right, we all have to adjust, so let's face it. So having good eye contact is really critical to ensuring that how you're coming across, are you confident, and making sure that they feel that you are being sincere and authentic in your exchanges, right? Leaning in to actively listen can also enhance that rapport building process. So if you're not already incorporating that in your engagement with others, be sure to keep doing that and stay focused, and definitely practice does make perfect, okay? If you're not natural at it, it does help over time to make it a little bit more comfortable for you, okay? Be sure to fully engage with your interviewer. What I mean by that is, listen, hear truly as to what they're communicating to you so that you can respond accordingly, specifically to what they're asking, all right? So let's talk about the communication style in general. And on this slide here, this is also says so much about you, okay? Don't get too relaxed with your language. I've had circumstances where, as an interviewer, your role is really to help them be relaxed, right? Well, unfortunately, I think with one of the circumstances, Ruth, you could tell, from our experience, right? One individual in particular that I recall just became really too relaxed, where they were starting to use slang, etc. Right? So just remember that's an additional layer of assessment for us interviewers as well. You're always being assessed, even when you're not formally interviewing. I've been in this career field in the corporate world for over 20 plus years. I haven't interviewed in, let's say, 8 years, Ruth, but I'm still also trying to, every exchanges, engagement that I have with professionals within the corporate environment, I'm always mindful and trying to be very intentional in how I come across. What I do communicate and share, I do try to follow up and commit to what I've committed to, if that makes sense. So remember, you're always being assessed for that next opportunity. Not that necessarily you're looking for that next opportunity, but if there's opportunities that do exist, you may potentially be tapped for that role, for example. Okay, so always be mindful of your engagement with others, right? Try to establish a rapport by finding really commonalities with your interviewer. If you happen to be a Cowboys fan, hey, what better way if I'm interviewing you to talk about the Cowboys? I can go on and on, right, Dewey? So definitely just find different ways. And that's how you build that rapport with that individual and really gain information and assess about them as well. Remember, again, you have a choice. When you're able to have the interviewer truly engage and share commonalities with you, they're going to be more open to sharing information with you, so that you can assess if this is truly the environment that you want to be in. Okay. So now let's move on to the bottom of the slide and really discuss potential questions to ask throughout the interview. These are examples of what you can ask that shows that you are truly interested and that you've done some level of research. Believe it or not, that does help. Even by the level of your questions, it can give us insight into if you've actually done some research. Okay. So moving to the last section here, we'll highlight some topics to avoid. All right. First bullet references asking questions that can easily be found on our website, right? Let's face it, we're a public traded company, lots of information out there already. Lots of different platforms have information, but dig deeper as to, okay, so all of these information, is this really the question that I want to know that I can easily go get somewhere else? But now that I'm in front of this interviewer, what information can I get from this individual that I can't easily find on the internet, for example? Okay, so here are some potential questions that actually I've heard that kind of gave me an insight that, wow, this person's really not serious about the role, right? This is what I personally have heard as well. And Ruth, I don't know if you heard it as well. It's like, what does Wells Fargo do? Come on. That gives me a lot of insight that this individual is really not well prepared and they have no idea what they want to step into and really lack the focus and opportunity to take advantage of their conversation with us, right? Or maybe another question that I've also heard is, can you tell me about the job? Well, there is a job description, but there's a way of asking, right? Because like Ruth had mentioned earlier, the job description is very much broad and not so specific, right? It's not going to list everything. It just can't. It's not possible. But what is it specifically within that role that you're applying to that you can get from that individual that maybe wasn't in the job description? So be more specific about maybe some of the projects or the expectations of that role, right? That will help to give you more value added questions, right? So again, now asking these types of questions show that, you aren't really doing a lot of research, like I had mentioned. So let's talk a little bit about some of the last two bullets. They're listed at the bottom there. Now, I'm not saying that they're not appropriate, like I said, for you to ask, but maybe not during this stage of the questioning at the last two bullets there. All right. So avoid those type of questions listed there in front of you at the early on stage. So maybe hold it for the offer stage. All right, let's move on to that next page there. Thank you so much. So it's also really a great transition for us now to look into how best to close out the interview. And that's by coming really prepared with those additional value added questions, as I had mentioned earlier. So asking questions is really, again, your chance to collect information about the job and also tells the interviewers that you are serious about your career endeavors with us. It also gives you an opportunity to really sell yourself where you can highlight key competencies that you have, and that's not that we can't find on the resume, for example. Okay. And more importantly, asking questions will give you the chance to really determine, again, if this is the right company, the right role for you. So it's finding that right fit. I think we're all looking to that, right? Does it provide you with the value and purpose that you are all looking for? Okay. So ask the questions that's important to you. So here are a couple of sample questions to ask when you, when given an opportunity to do so. You might want to ask, can you give me some examples of projects that, as I had mentioned earlier, that I be assigned to, or individuals that have been working on, or what you're currently working on specifically, right? Or maybe what does success look like? Because everyone has a different definition of that. But hopefully it would resonate to something specific to how you define success, right? So be prepared to ask those questions. So finally, do boast about yourself. This is something that I struggle with, but I am trying to get better at. But definitely do it in a humble way. No one wants an in-your-face type of individual that's just saying, "Oh, I'm the greatest," right? No, that's probably not the best way. But like I said, boast, because you have earned the rights to boast, because you've actually have performed, but do it in a very humble way, where you are able to back it up with facts and your specific experiences. Okay. So the last section of the slide gives you an example of how to close. Let's read it together. So I gave you some information on my most recent leadership experience and an ability to elaborate at all levels of the organization. What other information would be helpful to you? So I think that's a really good example of basically making sure that did I provide every information that's needed? And if not, what else can I provide to you to help you make that hiring decision, basically selecting me, right? So I say this is, again, a very effective closing. So again, reinforcing the strengths and ability to do the job. And also it gives the opportunity for the interviewer to ask any additional questions, and also hopefully, fill in any additional gaps that's needed. All right. So let's move on to the next slide on following up. As Dewey had mentioned at the top of the hour, following up is just as critical during the whole pre and during process, all right? Let's face it, we all want to make sure that we get the feedback that's needed, right? I know that everyone would absolutely want to make sure that we get a meaningful feedback, but just keep in mind when you're looking to reconnect and get feedback, a meaningful one, you may or may not get that feedback due to company policy, guidelines, time constraints, and so on, okay? However, definitely I encourage you to ask. It's worth making sure that you're gonna be able to increase your chance for a successful outcome, all right? And also continue on to have a dialogue with your point of contact within the company, all right? Like I said, keep in mind, you may or may not get it. Just feel free to ask as well, okay? So moving to some suggested follow-up routines. So luckily, there are multiple options to stay connected, right? In this day and age. Now, due to the environment that we're in, email is probably the best way. I know that way back when we used to send out cards or thank you notes. Well, I can tell you, I'm so thankful that I'm able to email because my handwriting is horrendous. I've been accused of, well, actually not accused, but I've been asked before, hey, do you know shorthand? Well, unfortunately, I don't. it just looks like chicken scratch. So that was the embarrassing part for me. So, so leverage your email, leverage LinkedIn. Those are really great platforms for you to be able to stay connected, and really email them a simple thank you. And also reinforcing in that thank you note why you feel that you would be a good fit and why you continue to be interested in that opportunity. Okay. Do email everyone that you engage with throughout that process, because again, we as a team, all interviewers, stakeholders will come together and debrief and have conversations specifically about each and every one of those individuals that they have interviewed, for example. Okay. This is a best practice, and I strongly encourage you to please continue to use that. All right. I've actually had some hiring managers, like I said before, you know, it's funny, I think we all have, right? Where if you're looking at multiple individuals that all have great credentials and seem to be a wonderful fit, right? They do look at additional components of what else outside of those interview questions and answers, for example, to assess who they want to go with, right? Because you want to make sure that you're on the top of their priority list and not the alternate, for example. Okay, so do follow up, send that follow-up note. All right. So as to how long to wait to follow up, that's always a question, right? This is why it's critical that during your questioning of us as well, ask about the timeline on the hiring decision. It's useful because depending upon the timeline given, you can adjust your follow-up accordingly, okay? If no timeline was discussed, it's fair to follow up, let's say in a week, to inquire about your status and ask when decisions will be made. Again, this can also reinforce your interest and availability for the opportunity that you interviewed with. All right. All right. I appreciate you guys sticking with me. So we have a few more slides to go. So let's move on to the specifically how to prepare yourself for after the interview and what to do when you receive a no. All right. Believe it or not, no's can be a teaching and learning opportunity. So be prepared, because at some point you will get a no. We've all been there, right, Ruth? Everyone will experience it. And I have had my share, like I said, over my 20 years of working experience. So let's take a look at how we can learn from the no's and build from there, okay? Again, I won't be addressing all of the bullets. However, I will highlight a few. Do accept rejection in a professional manner and go through the grieving process. I know that sounds so dramatic, right? But there is a process to being quote unquote rejected, right? Take the time to really be self-aware and be reflective. Ask yourself, would you change anything from those experiences and exchanges that you had throughout the interview process to help better your chances? Again, seeing as an opportunity to learn and build on those no's is going to be critical to your future success. Okay, so stay positive. You were selected out of hundreds of resumes and sometimes thousands for that interview. So you're that one step closer. All right, so keep that in mind. It's just how do you shift and flex so that you are better prepared next time. All right. See it as a new connection and stay in touch. Again, we have the LinkedIn platform that I've already seen a few LinkedIn requests come in. So Dewey, I'm right on your tail, I bet you. So when opportunities do open up, believe it or not, we will remember you, especially if there are some really great connections and positive exchanges throughout that process, okay? Opportunities come up all the time. So try to make sure that you stay in touch and engage, okay? Like I said, keep it also as an opportunity to expand that network, your network, all right? And also, finally, network even more, right? Living proof that hard work, determination, and really overcoming adversities will greatly improve your success over time. Honestly, the last few jobs that I've had has been because in early career connections that I've had with individuals that I've built relationships and professionally over the years. As a matter of fact, this current one was through an individual that I worked with many, many years ago. She was the reason why I joined this organization. Okay. I'd like to quickly really share some of the personal stories of how I also broke into recruiting. Like I said, building on those no's, right? It took me honestly over 2 years, 3 declines within one company before I finally got my break over 20 years ago into HR, right? That's not to say that I just only applied. I continued to perform in my role at that time, but I also volunteered and really asked to be mentored into the department that I wanted to go to. The timing eventually was right. And then with all of the mentorship and really the pre-work professionally that I was doing during that same time as well, helped me to prepare to be more successful to take on that opportunity when it did open up into HR. Okay, and here I am 20 years later, go figure, right? So something to keep in mind, remember at every point, like I mentioned, you're always being evaluated or assessed, okay? Go into all your interactions, whether it be virtual or in person, well prepared. And that's by being on time and at the right place. Be sure that you do arrive at least 10 minutes prior to your scheduled time, as mentioned earlier. Practice, as Ruth had mentioned multiple times, right? Practice your behavioral stories by having mock interviews with a friend, a mentor, or a career advisor. You guys, you're in school, you're paying for the tuition, which is inclusive of the career services that you have there. You have professionals that's there to help you to ensure your success. So leverage that, okay? Go to individuals that you really trust and are willing to be candid and honest with you. Remember, those are the ones that really want to be to ensure your success. Think about it this way. Giving feedback when it can be negative, right, is hard. Think about the time that they're willing to commit to giving you that hard feedback so that that can ensure your success. So go to those individuals. It can be hard, but those are the ones that you want to gravitate towards so that they can help you be better for that future opportunity. Okay, and do dress appropriately. When you're unsure about what's appropriate, ask. Your recruiters are there to help you, or anyone that you interact with. They will give you the heads up as to what's appropriate and what's not appropriate. Okay. And also actively listen to ensure each question is accurately answered. Okay. Limit rambling responses and tangents. As I had called out earlier, have your resume handy for reference, along with any notes that you might have, and also take notes. It can keep you keeping you focused, all right? And also treat other people that you encounter along the way, whether it be checking in with security, for example, if it's an in-person or at the reception area, with courtesy and respect. At every point, like I mentioned, I can't tell you this enough, you're always being evaluated, okay? Again, come prepared with well thought out questions to ask at the end of the interview. All right, let's move to do a quick review of the do's and don'ts on the next slide, please. So let's focus on, really for me, I tend to gravitate more towards, let's do more of this, right? So I'm gonna focus really on the do's. I can't emphasize enough how critical pre-planning for the interview is. So like I said earlier, be on time, know the location that you're going to, arrive before time, at least 15 minutes prior. Things happen, okay? So just be prepared for some of those things. Remember that you're always being assessed. When you arrive late or early, it's really another evaluation point that we can use during our decision process. You don't want to arrive late, okay? Practice your behavioral stories using real life examples. That's what it's all about. You've experienced it, so you know what things you did and how you adjusted and the outcome of that, right? So you should be able to share your story in a very clear and concise and vivid way. So I would strongly suggest that not only do utilize Google, they have tons of information out there, but also there's YouTube videos out there. I've actually have gone out there to look at it myself. There are some great videos out there that will help prepare you along with other search engines out there. Take advantage of it, okay? Again, dress appropriately. Ask your recruiter or individuals that you're engaging with for advice on how best to prepare yourself in terms of dress attire, okay? Stay focused so that you can deliver your responses clearly and concisely, okay? And absolutely treat other that you encounter with respect, like I had mentioned. And definitely come prepared. All right, let's move to the next slide, and that's going to be implementing some of what you've learned. We've covered a lot of great and valuable information today. Let's put that into an actual action plan to ensure that you are successful, okay? Leverage your resources, like I had mentioned earlier. Ask peers and managers to organize your mock interview sessions. Your school, take advantage of the career services and advisors. They offer lots of workshops and mock interview sessions. We actually participate as corporations and recruiters as well to join forces with your schools to help with mock interviews. So take advantage of that. Do some research, like I said, through Google or YouTube. Lots of information on behavioral-based interviewing. There's lots of questions as well that you can utilize to practice your interviewing skills, all right? Again, you have friends and individuals within your class that's also going through the same phases and career journey as you. Take turns interviewing each other and providing constructive feedback so that you can be successful. Like I said, help each other learn and grow. Remember, you are not in this alone. As recruiters, we want you to be successful. I'm going to be brutally honest. I want you to be successful because that means less work for me, okay? So I want you all to do well. I truly thank you for the active listening, and I'm going to now hand it over to David for the Q&A section.
Wow, that was an amazing amount of information. And I know I'm well into my career and I'm still just picking up things from Kit and Ruth. And I just want to say thank you. So a couple of things, I'm going to do this a little differently. Some of our questions are process driven. Some of our questions from our audience are answers that they have that are scenarios. And so I'm going to kind of throw them out at you both, and I'll call out the person's name who I'm asking first, and then the other person can piggyback or however they would like to do that. Does that work for everyone?
Sounds good.
Perfect. All right, Ruth, I'm going to ask this one to you. This is the dreaded, infamous question. How do you answer, what are your strengths? And more importantly, how do you answer, what are your weaknesses?
Oh boy, I love that one. So first of all, be honest. And try to, I mentioned before, right, your elevator speech to kind of be, have skills that correlate to the job. So the things that you don't want to do is you don't want to say is, my weaknesses is, you know, I'm always running late, or I hate, large crowds, or something where you're like, oh gosh, well, guess what? We work in very large groups. We have to multitask. So sometimes something that can be that, my weaknesses are, I don't necessarily enjoy public speaking. So to overcome that, what I've done is I've joined, Toastmasters. I'm taking some speech classes. I tend to get myself out of my comfort zone and be the first one to ask the question. That's been a skill set that I've been working continuously to improve on. So you acknowledge that, guess what? I'm not going to be the first one to always sign up to be the orator, but I'm working on it and I acknowledge it. Not only does that show self-awareness, but shows that you're confidently working on a skill set that not a lot of people would want to speak up and say, gosh, I hate public speaking. So think of it something, it's okay to say it's a weakness, but then tie it up with what you're doing to improve on it.
Awesome. Fantastic. So Kit, I feel like this question is literally tailored for me to ask it to you. Like, how do I answer, not how do I answer, like, how does a candidate just help get rid of that anxiety that comes with the interview, those butterflies that just sometimes feel debilitating? What are your best practices to help with that?
Yeah, you picked the right person to ask that because you're right. I have had anxieties before and I still do. It's a work in progress, right? For example, having a great individual and team around you to kind of calm your nerves a little bit, it helps, especially like, for example, I'm not a huge fan of public speaking, especially in large forum where it's one way. Having an individual like Dewey, for example, to kind of calm and set the tone is a huge help. And what I do as well when I go into a huge forum or an in-person event doing presentation, David, is I actually go in there early and then start engaging with individuals, get to know them, and then for them to get to know me. So that has helped me overcome a lot of anxiety and nervousness. Not that I don't, because it's not a natural tendency for me, right? But that definitely has helped. But more importantly, understanding why you're there and the reason why you're there really can help gain that confidence and kind of minimize that anxiety so that let's face it, I think we emphasize it to death, right? Being prepared. That's why that when you do some research coming to the table with potential questions that they're going to ask and being prepared to have answers to that, that will help tremendously in terms of your anxiety level during the interview process. That's what has helped me.
Oh, fantastic. So I'm going to throw this one out to both of you because I really want to know both of your responses. I'm currently employed. I'm looking at the market, not me. Oh, TMCF, don't calm down. they're looking
What?
they're looking at the market.
One eye open, one eye open.
Recorded line, David, recorded line.
When you're asked the question, why do you want to leave your current role? How do you answer that without, throwing your company under the bus or seeming as you're, a ship jumper? How do you approach that?
Yep. And that's a great question. And you never want to throw anyone under the bus. So you've all heard the situation where, we don't leave companies, we leave bad managers. And we tend to say, well, my manager, XYZ, right? Never, never, never want to do that. So you want to really find out, okay, first of all, you want to be honest. Second, you want to make sure that you are communicating what perhaps you may not have an opportunity at your current company. So it is completely acceptable to say, based on the current location of my company, unfortunately, I don't have access to working with international clients. Your company offers me that opportunity. Based on my future goals, the current department is so small enough, we don't have the ability to grow, and I'd like to make a move in the next year or two. So you are able to convey, here's my rationale. And quite frankly, it's likely that person that's interviewing says, yeah, they've probably had a conversation with their existing manager. And they know, yeah, you know what, you want to do some international clients? We don't have an international client base. Or you want to do more marketing and graphics? Well, we outsource that particular process. So you're not going to get that exposure here. So just make sure that it's something that you can tie in to, something that you can't get at your current company. Now, granted, there are going to be situations where you're like, I work for a large corporation. I should be able to, segue into that particular field. Then be realistic and say, based on my current career path, in order for me to get to a marketing role within our current career path, I would have to take maybe 2 or 3 lateral moves, right? Maybe perhaps your manager's saying, okay, in order for you to be at the director level, I need you to start here and here first before we can get you there. And another company might offer you a faster path. Be realistic, be honest, but make sure that you are positive in the way that you communicate that.
Yeah, awesome. Kate, what would you
Well
like to add?
said. Honestly, that was really well said, Ruth. Definitely, I echo all of those items. And I kind of look at it from this perspective as well. You know, it's kind of like when you're out in the dating field again, you never want to badmouth your ex-girlfriend or ex-boyfriend, right? Because that actually, for me, from my experience, it also tells me about you as well. It's like, I'm always thinking also, is this person gonna, you know, badmouth me as well? Because that gives me an insight into who you are as a person, right? And it's just a matter of fact that, you know, sometimes you outgrow the opportunity or that individual, right? And you're looking to explore what else is additional opportunities for you to grow and learn out there. Okay. And you might be at a different phase in your life, and it's okay to share that information. You're just looking for a different opportunity where you can you know, maybe fit a different phase in your life as you've gotten older. For example, let's say that were with a smaller company, maybe it's healthcare benefits, right? I don't know about you, David, because you look pretty young, but I'm old. I need that. I need a really great healthcare benefit, right? So it's critical that I am with a, you know, a larger corporation where there's a little bit more stability. Again, you have to assess where you are phase in your life. How does that play into your personal life, but also career professionally as well? Okay.
Awesome. That I got a lot of knowledge for myself and for the group, and I know that the audience is thinking the same things. Oh, okay, it's okay to be honest. It's okay to just convey it in a way that is going to be constructive to what I can do for your organization, and also be sincere to who I am.
Right.
Okay, so I think one of the ones that I want to know, and just the audience has put forward, is how do you answer that question? Where do you see yourself in 5 years if you don't know? Like, you honestly don't know. So Ruth, I'm gonna pitch that over to you, and just how would you want that answer to you, or what do you think about that?
Yeah. So yeah, there's going to be situations, especially early on in your career, where you're like, I'm still exploring different opportunities, right? So maybe perhaps you don't identify a specific role. Like you might not say, I see myself in a leadership role, or I see myself managing, projects. So then maybe you focus on, what do you truly love to do? And do you see yourself doing that in 5 years? Because many times a company, maybe the individual who's interviewing is asking because they want to know, is this going to be work that you're going to find still interesting in 2 to 3 or 5 years from now, right? I'm investing time and training to develop you. And are you going to say, well, in 5 years, I see myself as a director? And you're like, ooh, yeah, the last director I hired had 10 years of experience, right? So you want to make sure that you say, well, it could be, well, I see myself in a role where I'm still actively growing and gaining additional skill sets, but I also would like to see myself with an expanded, responsibilities where maybe perhaps I am managing. Can you tell me, in your work environment, is that a career path that I could achieve in 5 years? Right? So it's a two-way conversation. It's not just, yep, I see myself here. It's like, is there a potential, right? So it doesn't always have to be a very definitive. It could be a starting point for the conversation.
Awesome.
It could also, you have to adjust, right? Because it might, again, be early talent, which is the realm that I work in and support, right? There are so many different programs out there. That's why, again, being honest and candid with who you are and what you're seeking is really something that we encourage, especially with your recruiter, right? Because we kind of have a holistic view of what's available out there within the company. And the more that we're able to understand what your interests are and where you potentially may want to go, maybe 5, 10 years, we can help guide you to the most appropriate path. It might mean not the perfect one at that time, right? But at least it'll get you to the right direction. And there are many companies, especially of this size, that will actually offer rotational opportunities. And if you're not sure what you want to do yet, David, for example,
Mhm.
then maybe the rotational opportunity where it's going to give you more exposure to the different aspects of the different opportunities within the organization or roles and responsibility, that might be the best route for you, right? And it's okay to be there. We just want to make sure that we bring in the right talent to the organization that will want to be here longer term. And we want individuals to grow their career here. We typically use that, rule of, 2 years, 3 years, then we consider you to be an expert. We want individuals that start with us and then continue to maybe grow into different areas so that you can help us move it forward and stay competitive by bringing different best practices and a different perspective that maybe us old folks don't really have. We've been here for 15, 20 years, for example, right? We need fresh perspective, and we need to be able to rotate individuals to come in from that point of view as well. Okay.
No, amazing. So Kit, I'm going to throw this to you because you mentioned this earlier when we were talking about, you wanting to get into HR, get into recruiting and not having the skill set at the time. So one of the questions asked from the audience is, how do you develop skill sets specifically for a job description that's completely different than your current career?
Yeah, it was very different. Let's just say that. I don't think I shared this early on. I actually, my degree is in biology chemistry. Go figure, I'm here in HR, right? My intention was twofold for that biology chemistry was because my mom and dad wanted me to be a doctor. Well, obviously that didn't happen, right? But my intention was really, for me, I wanted to help individuals. I wanted to connect individuals and be an added value to not only the people around, but also overall the community, right? Well, the more I started working and becoming aware of all of the different opportunities, I realized that, hey, I can help and add value in many different ways and not necessarily just do the doctor path, right? So what I did was at that time, I got my foot in the door, started networking, working with my manager directly and really telling him, this is where I want to be. This is what I want to, where I want to be longer term. Because I enjoy this type of work, but I also feel very, very passionate about helping individuals to be aware. It's about education for me, right? I didn't have a lot of guidance early on because I think Dewey and Ruth knows me well enough. I was a refugee. I was hard trying to learn the English language initially. My parents wasn't able to provide a lot of insight, not because they, didn't have the knowledge. It's just because they just weren't aware of the different opportunities out there, right? That's why recruiting was a really great fit for me. Well, I didn't have any HR experience nor recruiting, but what I had was really the focus and persistence and really the passion around that and where I wanted to be. And I also had really a support system in my manager, but also the HR team that was willing to take an opportunity and help groom me for that next opportunity. Now, I'm not saying that happened overnight. Like I said, it took over 2 years and multiple interviews to get to where I am now, okay? And that was my first, I took a lot of research on interviewing techniques and understanding what does an HR, specifically a recruiter does, right? But also, in addition to performing my job at that time successfully, I also went to the HR department and the director to really shadow and learn from them during my off hours to see them, monthly until I got there eventually over 2 years for that opportunity. They weren't able to offer me that position the first nor second time because the timing was off. Like I said before, timing has to also match, right? You might be prepared, but if there's not an opportunity there, then it's not going to happen, right? It eventually got me to that opportunity because after 2 years, that HR department had senior recruiters that were able to take on new recruiters like myself, okay? So at that time early on, they just didn't have that infrastructure to help me and ensure my success. So, but when the opportunities came up, After all of the years of being mentored and shadowing and observing what as a recruiter does, I was better prepared technically, but also more importantly, the department was prepared to take on someone so green like myself. Okay. So sorry to provide you with so much around the loop to get there, but that was my journey.
Yeah, no, that is fantastic. And the takeaways that I heard were stay the course, and a no doesn't mean no, it just means not right now.
Right.
And
And
so
David,
that,
if I can add to that,
no, of course.
Kit mentioned mentoring, right? And she was persistent. Now, here's the one piece of it. If you are currently in a job and you go to your manager and get that initial no, you have to really do some self-assessment. Sometimes it is an initial no because you still have some performance to do, right? So if you are not performing at the top level of your current role, and you're going to your manager saying, I want some stretch goals, well, they're going to say, well, before I give you a stretch goal, let's make sure that you're high performing here now. So if you're going to go to your manager with that ask, please make sure that you are top performing, that you are self-aware of the skill sets, and that you can take it on. Because what you don't want to do is ask for a stretch goal and have one foot in and one foot out, because now your manager's like, okay, I've given you these extra duties, but your other duties are now lacking, right? You're impacting the rest of the team because you're not performing. So know that I would definitely recommend you ask for stretch goals, but be very self-aware that in order to take a stretch goal, you've got to be a high-performing individual.
No, fantastic. I love all the gems that you are dropping and just all this knowledge that we're all receiving. Now, this next question is going to seem simple, but it just from an interviewee standpoint, how do you not respond with cliche answers to cliche questions? How do you make that happen? And also, you don't want to come off condescending. And so, how do you make that happen? I'll give that to both of you. Let's start with you, Kit.
Like first, for me as interviewer, I try to avoid and limit the eye rolling when I hear cliche answers. It's like, well, I'm a people person. It's like, oh my God, if I hear that again, no, right? But yeah, you again, being really authentic and candid and really assess what is it truly that they're asking, right, before you respond. And answer in a way that really feels comfortable and true to you. For me, I think that's how you approach any responses. Do you really truly believe in what you're saying? Because believe it or not, we can tell if you're being authentic and frank with us. So I was like, oh my gosh, it's like they're reading from a script or something. So, but for me, that it has to come internally. And do you truly believe it? And if sometimes we don't always believe it, make sure that you practice in coming across that so that it's sincere. So that's for me kind of like a straightforward way and simple way of answering it. But Ruth, I'm sure that you can add a lot more context to your perspective there.
Yeah, well, I was going to say easier said than done, right? It's easier to say, don't do it. Don't give the candid answer. But what you want to do is, truthfully, the preparing of going in prior to the interview is going to help you avoid those just candid answers, whether it's, oh, I always do that, I'm a people person, because you've already gone in with a mindset of, I need to distinguish myself from everyone else in the candidate pool. And if you know, well, everybody else in the candidate pool potentially is going to give a candid answer, how am I going to stand out? So if you've prepared ahead of time, I guarantee you're either going to reduce your candid answers to, 0, or you're going to at least eliminate them just to maybe 1. So, most of the times the recruiter will maybe allow you 1, but yeah, absolutely. If you go in really with that mindset and preparedness, I think you can really avoid going in with those canned answers of like, oh, I always do that. Or, I have a passion for analytics. Okay, well, tell me why, right? Mm-hmm. So easier said than done.
And those are some of the key words, as Ruth was saying, David, sharing, is that we as recruiters are trained to listen to, because when you say always, let's face it, do you really always? it makes us want to dig even more, just so you know, right? It makes our antenna go up. But yeah, making sure that for the STAR method, for behavioral based, using catch words, using words like always and things that just aren't realistic. Those are going to be items that you should be aware of. Again, going back to being very specific to your experiences, that will actually help you a lot in terms of coming across as very candid, because it's only specific to your experiences, right? So being able to share that in a very clear, concise manner is going to help tremendously in coming across as very authentic and sincere.
Awesome. Okay, so I asked you, this is my last question from the audience for the day, but I asked both of you to do this because this is something that I personally struggle with. How do you be succinct? How do you not be so long-winded when you like to chat?
I am laughing because let me tell you all, to be fully transparent, I am not the most succinct person. You have to, I literally had to create an Excel spreadsheet for myself. I've been doing this for 25 years. And initially, when I first started myself applying, I was wondering, well, gosh, I'm a good performer. Why am I not being selected? And it was because I wanted to tell this very long-winded story. Okay. So yes, individuals say, the details count. They absolutely count. But the way you convey them are even more impactful. So in order to not go in on this long tangent, write down your response. Read it to yourself. Look to see, am I repeating it? There's going to be opportunities where, yes, I want to emphasize this. Again, let me emphasize, I have a passion for XYZ. Absolutely appropriate. But if you find yourself, you've said the statement, and then you've said it again, and then, maybe you go off on a tangent and then you realize, ooh, did I answer the question? You have to make sure that you write it down and prepare. I can't stress that enough. I've gone in situations where, just this morning I was doing a presentation to an executive, thankfully, who knows me very well, and knows that I also can be very quick. I speak very, very fast, right? So she's worked with me for quite a few years, so she knows me. So also, that's another thing, right? It's not also going on a tangent, is you have to be very conscious of your speed, right? In your head, you hear what you're saying, you understand it, but are you speaking so quickly that the person's like, whoa, 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 how do I, what do I write down, right? Because remember, that person is also writing down and capturing that conversation. So it's a bit of a dance that you're doing with yourself. Is, am I slowing down to convey it appropriately? Am I emphasizing when it's appropriate? And am I ensuring not to go off on a tangent? Write it down.
Well, fantastic. Thank you both for all the nuggets and knowledge and sharing your wealth of expertise with us today. I'm going to pass it back to Dewey, but I just want to personally say thank you.
Hey, David, thanks so much for the great information. And Kit and Ruth, what can we say about the way that you all do things? You all have been on the forefronts of this work for a number of years, and every time you bring fire and you bring the right kind of content. Scholars, we are chock full of questions. We covered off on as many as we could for today. If we did not get an opportunity to address your question during the broadcast, please know that we want to be able to take some of those offline. Ruth and Kit, is it okay if scholars reach out to you directly, maybe get 15 minutes for a follow-up Zoom? Is that acceptable? And is LinkedIn the best route for them to reach you? Please touch on that briefly.
Absolutely.
Yes, absolutely.
Yep.
Use our QR code. I've already seen some come in, so yay.
I've seen 10 come in, so let's see if it goes up.
See, there she go, name dropping and number dropping. You see how Ruth does it, because Norwood is smooth with one request that's come in. One.
We're not competitive.
I know. We're bankers. We don't compete at all against each other. And I'm only kidding because I've had more than one. Hey, listen, we're going to stay on task here and get everybody out of here over the next 5 minutes or so. As a reminder, team, Angel has brought up for us the QR code for today. Please take a few moments and go ahead and submit feedback to us. Very important. That'll just take you right over to a very, very short survey. And in turn, we can gather some feedback from you on today's session. We will use that feedback as we continue to develop more content in the days ahead. So please go ahead and jump over it and take a minute or so to fill that out. Angel, as we continue, we can jump to the next slide. Don't forget, Beyond College continues. We'll go one slide forward from here. Team, now we got 4 in the can. We had our 1-2 punch done here in March Madness with the discussions that we had around resume writing and interview skills. You've got on-demand playback available for entrepreneurship as well as mentors and sponsors. Don't forget, and I'm going to ask everyone to spotlight here, our upcoming session. We talked about it before. We are now going to be able to host on the campus of Bowie State University our budgeting and money management session. And so a couple of rules with this. Right now, it's going to be open only to our Bowie State students. That may or may not change, but be prepared for additional details that may come in relative to that event. Hey, Betsy, I saw you come on for a moment. Anything that you want to add briefly to shout out Rosetta and our great friends over at Bowie?
Nope, I was just going to clap and wave my hands and be excited.
We're excited to be able to get that one back done in person. And so Bowie State, thank you all so much. And we're looking forward to seeing you all there next month. We'll have social media smarts. We'll continue, and you'll see the rest of the items here that are coming up: salary versus value. Of course, the discussions around career development. A lot of good opportunities that will be coming up in the summertime around career pathways. Please make sure that you register and share the information with anyone that may want to join and participate. And don't forget, register. And if you can't join us real time, you can always access the playback on demand. Our Money Matters. I hope that folks are continuing to utilize that platform as a great way to build your financial future and, candidly, to look for career opportunities. Special thanks to our buddy Bonnie Wallace and to her entire team for the great work that they're doing with that platform. Please get connected in at ourmoneymatters.com. Again, ourmoneymatters.com will give you all of the details that you need from there. All right, I think our next slide spotlights a day in the life. So please, same rules, team. Go ahead and scan the QR codes here to access a session that we did recently with our great friend Joe Dumars, and of course the great session that we did with Wale Coxum. Very important, team. When you scan these items, you must enter that password that's there, passcode, that's on the screen. I'm not going to read it out loud. It's there on the screen for you to see. Please note, all of the characters are there. It is case sensitive, and you must use those special characters when you register. If not, you will not get in. So please just note the passcodes that are listed there. A Day in the Life is also coming back in April. We are so excited. We'll now be having our 5th installment of the Day in the Life series coming up on the evening of Tuesday, April the 26th. So stand by for more details and a registration link that will be coming very, very soon relative to that program. Last but not least, some resources to stay connected. The University Programs team, our great talent community, is doing amazing, amazing work. Big shout out to all of our veterans that are on with us today. I know our buddy Sean Passmore is out there somewhere in Radio Land or listening to the playback. Don't forget to connect in through our military recruiting work that's happening in those given areas. Of course, Beyond College, as we've talked about, and then also tuition funding sources. Really, really great resources that are available through TFS. And special thanks to Richard and his team for all of the work that they do to collaborate on this series and get the information out to everyone that wants to participate. All right, with that said, I want to thank all of our TMCF partners, David and Jeremy and Betsy and others that are behind the scenes kind of getting amazing things done. And I also got to just take a minute to shout out the Wells Fargo team. Angel, thank you so much for the great work that you lead and your engagement. Ruth, Kit, thank you so much. We get to do this again tomorrow with our great friends over the Jackie Robinson Foundation. So thank you for all of this good information. I don't want to leave the call, though, without acknowledging our great high schoolers that are on. So we've got Eastside High School on with us. I wonder if that's East Side out of New Jersey. If so, we're very familiar with that school. We've got Sickles on with us today as well. We've got Francis Lewis High School on. We also have Sparkman High School and then also Walton High School in the mix with us today. So high schoolers, we always love to shout you all out. Thanks for joining us for today's content, and we hope that you'll follow up with our partners to be able to learn more. We've got the Zoom here. I'll ask everyone to maybe come on camera if you're in a position where you can for a moment, and then you can kind of salute our wonderful panelists and partners for everything that was shared. We see lots of waves and lots of smiling faces out there. Thank you all so much for joining us for today. Come be with us or come join us again on April the 21st for the great session that we'll be hosting on the campus of one of our great HBCUs in Bowie State University. Please continue to stay safe. Enjoy the rest of March Madness. Got some hoops action happening tonight, so be sure to tune into those games. Team, it's an honor and privilege to be your host on these broadcasts. Until next time, have a great day, everybody. We'll talk soon. Take care. And to anyone that's still on the line, we are now going to end our recording. And we'll ask all of those individuals that are still with us to